Hello and welcome to the first ever episode of the Geek Nostalgia Podcast. I am your host, Gene Arona, joined as always by...
What's going on, everybody? My name's Dave.
And before we get into things, we're going to tell you a little bit about this show, who we are, and why we're doing this. So first and foremost, as you can tell by the name of the podcast, we want to talk about things that we geeked out about when we were younger, and frankly, stuff we still geek out about because it's important to do so. Dave, what would you add to that?
80s and 90s. That was our time. That's when we grew up. That's all of our nostalgia right there. And it's coming back in a big way. Everybody's into it. I've stayed into it. I think you have as well.
Hell yes.
And that's what it's all about.
All right. Well, on that note, we're going to kick off our inaugural episode by talking about the video game consoles that really spoke to us first and foremost, but really got us into gaming. And quite frankly, we were in a privileged position because we got to see the home console market grow into what it is today. So I feel it was a very special time, but I'm not going to get into all the semantics. What we're going to do is we're going to talk about why it was special to us, because that's what we do, the shit we geeked out about. So Dave, do you want to go first? You want me to go first?
I want to add to that, Gene, the advancement that we've seen with video games too, from 8-bit all the way to, it looks lifelike now. But consoles, we're also going to be digging into movies, food, of course, wrestling, probably touch on music, just a whole bunch of other genres. So stay tuned and listen to the shows.
Yeah. I'm gonna piggyback on that, Dave. And yes, there is no domain that we will not touch on. If it tickles our fancy, if we geeked out about it, we're going to talk about it.
Right on.
So I have what is essentially my top 5, and it's not necessarily any order. Chronologically speaking, it's more about what it did for me. So my first one that right on top of my list is the Sega Genesis, because it was my first console. It was the first time I ever owned a video game console that I could just walk into my living room, turn that thing on, pick up that goofy curved controller with the 3 big buttons. 6 later on, but the one I had initially had A, B, and C, if I'm not mistaken. It was my first console. Sonic, that terrible, what was the flaming Altered Beast? Altered Beast, not a good game, but it was one of the first games. But there's some other games on there that absolutely came to adore. Sonic and Knuckles, Sonic 2, Mortal Kombat, Street Fighter 2, which everyone loves Street Fighter 2, and the 15 million iterations of it. It is also something that marked a shift in that, A, my focus went from toys and physical things to that as what I like doing with my spare time. But it also was a thing where, because it was starting to gain in popularity in a big way in the mainstream, movie studios, animation studios, etc., started to take notice of popularity. And generally when a movie came out, there was a game to come with it. Weren't always good. They were not always good. But that, it made me feel like there were things being marketed to me, specifically to me. So that's why the Sega is first on my list.
I go back a little further in that, just because what got me started with gaming in general is the arcades. Playing them in the washateria. Hearing the noise, couldn't even see the screen because I was so little. And then eventually being able to pull a chair over and stand up on the chair and play it that way. And then the consoles came out. I had the NES. And the NES, I played that with my mom a lot. Hours on it. And then Super Nintendo came along. Switched over to that. Even better. I did have the Sega. So I had, at one point I got rid of the regular Nintendo. Then I had the SNES and the Sega at the same time. And the SNES took a step back for me. Yeah, became all about the Sega for a little bit. But then eventually I came right back to the Super Nintendo and did that. So that's what retro gaming started out for me was like. And then, of course, you got all the new ones now. But arcade, NES, SNES, Nintendo, really. Nintendo had it back in the day. Now it can be arguable, but back then it was Nintendo for sure.
They were the dominant force.
Definitely.
That's a good segue, because my number 2 on my list was the SNES.
Mm.
And First and foremost, because my favorite game of all time came on the SNES, packed in, if I'm not mistaken, Super Mario World.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I've said it to you before, Dave. I bet I beat that game 15 times across all the various releases from then until now. I love that game. It stands up. And I would say probably the biggest difference between the SNES and the Sega, even though they came out at similar times, is I was more likely to spend hours playing the SNES versus the Sega, where maybe it's like 15, 20-minute increments, something like that, 30 minutes tops. I didn't just spend hours and hours playing it the way I would when I got my SNES. It was less quote unquote hardcore than Sega, no blood, but they had great games. Something I think ended up being really what Nintendo's signature continues to be today, which is it's not focused on hyper realism, anything that was overly violent or too hardcore. But they put out fun games. Donkey Kong Country, Super Punch Out, very hard game. It was at that point where I realized games weren't just a fun diversion, but they could be great, absolutely great compared to any other form of entertainment. So that's where I'm at with the sort of the number 2 on my list.
Right. Well, Nintendo had the kid-friendly games. Sega was more of a hardcore game, and I wanted to like Sega more than I did and than I do now. It's just like when you're playing a game like Sonic and you're doing spinning and going really fast, my eyes can't keep up with that. Yeah, it almost hurts my eyes to watch it. Nintendo, it seems like the pace, I guess, is a little slower and more natural feeling. But it could be because, Genesis marketed that had the blast processing.
Mm.
So, and that's the reason why they did what Nintendo don't.
One of the greatest marketing campaigns of all time.
Right. And I mean, their processor wasn't that much faster than the SNES.
Not from a technical standpoint, no.
See, after that, it was, you had a choice between N64 or PlayStation. N64 stayed with Nintendo, and I wanted to be loyal to it, but, this PlayStation, it looked different. It wasn't kid-like. It was adult-like. And I think I was more drawn to that. So I got the PlayStation, and I never looked back. Ever since then, I've been kind of everything but Nintendo, because that took my adult side and it took the kid out of me. I mean, I'll revisit Nintendo every now and then. I mean, it still had a lot of great games, but now you get stories and so much detail into everything. So that drew me away from Nintendo, the PlayStation, and that was, even the leap in graphics at that point was just unbelievable.
So I would make a pit stop at the N64 because that was actually my number 3. It hit at a very special time for me, though. It was, frankly, when my love of wrestling, I would say, was at its peak. Okay, in middle school, my mother allowed me to invite all my buddies from school, even people who weren't my buddies, to come over because we'd rent the pay-per-views. She would make frozen pizzas, and we would sell like $5 tickets. So we were making money off of these pay-per-views. That was like the height of my wrestling mania. But N64 had 3D modeled characters. It had built-in 4-player action, because remember that in N64 you can plug 4 controllers in. So being able to play multiplayer like that was just a dream for me. Especially when you think about, WCW versus NWO, the World War, and some of those games of WWF WrestleMania. That was, Dave, I'm talking like guaranteed hours of enjoyment for me every single time I sat down. That is a game that I did not play for 30 minutes. I played for an hour minimum every time. I love those games. But then also thinking about the same thing with multiplayer, right? GoldenEye, Perfect Dark. Hell, Mario Kart 64. This was a forum for me, and let's be honest here, it's more than 3 friends. It was 5 or 6 of us passing controllers around, those weird ass controllers. For sometimes all-nighters. just because we just played and played and played and talked so much shit, Dave, so much shit. And so yeah, that's why that generation was important for me. For multiplayer, if nothing else. Plus, having 3D worlds, which not great 3D worlds in most cases, but still, it was 3D worlds. It was, one of the early attempts at it in video game. It was mixed results, but
Oh, it was special then. Definitely, I'd say probably the top buddy system that you could get.
Go into that a little bit. What do you mean?
Just where you can play it with other people, with your friends, your buddies. That's probably won't get anything that good again.
Yeah.
Especially not that kind of feel that you had back then. For you younger people out there, unfortunately, you will never get that. But it was an amazing time. Yeah, I mean, I dabbled with N64, and I remember going to some of those little gaming parties that we had. GoldenEye, wrestling, even the Mario Party games. But I did the PlayStation, and then I went on to the PS2. You can notice a graphical change even from that.
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't think PS2 could get any better than what it did. We were pretty wrong.
So this is interesting. This parallel we got going on here, because even though I am technically a year older than you, I seem to be one console behind you. because like right now I'm going on to the PS1. Yeah, I'm going on to the PS1. I'm going to turn my page, look at my notes. Very similar to what you just said. The PS1 showed me the games could be mature, right? I just told you that Super Mario World was my favorite game of all time. My favorite franchise of all time, Dave, is Metal Gear Solid. That thing was a movie. That thing, in addition to having amazing video game mechanics, which it did. Hideo Kojima knocked it out of the park. Introduced a lot of amazing new concepts. The story, the narrative, was as good as any spy thriller in Hollywood. It just was. The characters had depth. There were subsystems and subsystems of subsystems, and everything about it. Like this is mature. This is going to be important to me for a very long time. And honestly, it put video games on par with every other form of entertainment. Like at that point, the conversation died as far as like, well, there's a hierarchy, right? Movies are the number one form of entertainment, which, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, back then movie theaters were still very, very important. This could sway me to say, no, I could go to the movies, or I can take my ass home and order a pizza and play Metal Gear Solid. You know what I mean? It was that to me. It was that, I don't know, paradoxical that it shifted things for me in a big, big way.
You're playing the movie.
Literally.
And that game itself, I mean, they made Mission Impossible movies, but that game was more Mission Impossible to me. Had that feeling. And they even made Mission Impossible game, but there's nothing like Metal Gear.
And you called this out with some of the Nintendo stuff, right? With it being kind of kiddish. That was the word you used. Like, these games became, some of them, very not kiddish, right? Because you start thinking about like the Resident Evils, the Twisted Metals, where it was very intentionally dark, thematically speaking. Like, we didn't get that before the PS1. It was amazing.
Right, and probably given our age at that time, it was almost feeling like a step into manhood.
That's fair. Well, and something else I want to throw at you too, Dave, is going from a cartridge to a CD. Look what that did to the audio in these games. Like I mentioned, Resident Evil audio, you kind of got thrust into the forefront as far as importance to building this atmosphere of these, again, 3D worlds they were going for. Like listening for footsteps that mattered all of a sudden. You know what I mean? Is there a monster coming down the hallway? Or did I just hear a doorway open? Excuse me. Did I just hear a door open? What was that creaking sound? Like all of a sudden we have that quality of audio and they utilized it, they leveraged it. And honestly, I think that even though this is the third time we've recorded this episode, people, That's kind of the first time I ever considered that implication. But you mentioned that we're not seeing the kind of generational leaps we used to between consoles. I think it's because it wasn't just technologically speaking, it was entire new barriers were being breached with these consoles and how our senses were engaged in the games. It wasn't just beeps, right? It was screams in the distance. It was weather. It was lighting. It was all this stuff that really started to come to the forefront starting at the PS1 era.
It was huge advancements. Probably bigger than what it should have been. You know, I'm sure they would have liked to have gone a little slower if they could redo it just to keep us buying more consoles. Because, I mean, now, what are you going to get?
Another half step, inevitably.
Yeah, I mean, you get the Series X, the PS5. There's not much of a difference from last generation PS4 and Series 1. It's not that much of a difference. You can play a 4K movie on them now. That's pretty much the difference.
Okay, well, you just touched on PS2 a second ago, right?
Right.
Finish your thought there, because I bet there's some really interesting stuff yet you have to share with us.
Oh, well, to me, the PS2, probably the greatest system just because of all the games you had with it and the way it leaped from the better graphics on the PS1. Now you got even better on the PS2. And back then, we didn't think it could ever get any better than that. Like it. Back then, that looked real life to us. You know, like what you would see now. That's what the PS2 looked like to us then. And we knew it was going to be a big thing. Talking about it, going to school, talking to my friends, like, man, this game's going to be coming out. It's Metal Gear Solid 2, actually. We drooled over the Game Informer magazine because it showed pictures and it talked about Metal Gear Solid 2, Sons of Liberty. And this new console, PS2, it was black, had the blue. And then the back of the PS2 discs was blue. And it was a beautiful console. All the games. And it was a big time for gaming. And it made everybody else have to step it up at that point.
This is where we converge. Because PS2 is the last one on my list. Scope and scale grew exponentially. Exponentially, Dave. Side note, GTA 3. Open world, right? You could literally make your own games within the games. Not even playing the campaign. Just going around causing havoc, right? It was to be many people's first DVD player. Because when you looked at dollars to donuts, return on investment, a new PlayStation 2 wasn't that much more expensive than the average DVD player on the market.
So I think it was $100 cheaper, actually.
So there you go. So might as well have the ability to play games. Like it was important in the market for that reason. I knew lots of people who owned them just for a DVD player, to your point about the price. And I didn't think about that, but yes, you're right. It was cheaper than a lot of the big guys, the Magnavoxes and folks like that were selling.
Even Sony's DVD player.
Even Sony's DVD player. I'll hold my hands out, people, like you can see me. Those initial DVD players were enormous.
Oh, yeah.
They were big.
They were about the size of VCR, except not as high. That the height wasn't there. And
somehow we were okay with that, even though, like, if you can find a DVD player, it's like the size of a CD-ROM. Like it's small. It's small. I don't know what the hell was going on inside those boxes, but yeah, that's where I would probably end my story personally, is on the PS2, and it became that's where I knew gaming was going to be a permanent part of my life, because the promise, I think, was kind of being fulfilled going from PS1 to PS2, and just looking at where PS2 took us, like I knew if it's at least this good going forward, they got me. And obviously, it's grown since, not as exponentially as we've established, but PS2 for me is what really cemented me as a gamer long term. Like, I mean, I knew in my adult years, I'm still going to be gaming. And yes, I do want to throw a special shout out and a lot of love to Metal Gear Solid 2 Sons of Liberty, because I love that game. Didn't love that I didn't start out with Snake and that it was Raiden, but still a great game nonetheless.
Right. And I think I knew I was going to be a gamer for life back with the Nintendo, the regular NES. I never wanted to stop playing those games. And the fact they just kept getting better and better, why change? But for me, the last big system for me would probably be the PS3. That was probably the last system that I got where the graphics got the best and really hasn't gotten much better than that now. I mean, some things here and there, but you play PS3 today and you can compare it to today's games. They look very similar. So that was probably the last generational leap, really, in gaming. It's just all kind of been, like you said, half steps up since then.
Yeah.
But the PS3, I loved that system, although it was very expensive for the time. But it was also very expensive for them to make. It was a complicated process. Nobody wanted to make a game for it because of the complications. But then you get a Blu-ray player with it as well. And Blu-ray players were even more expensive than DVD players were. But I enjoyed that system a lot. Then, Nintendo still had to come back. They had the Wii. That was some impressive technology there with the movement and everything. Mm-hmm. And that put Nintendo back into the scene. So I dabbled with the Wii, the Wii U. Both great systems. Now you got the PS5 now. And the Game Pass, I got to tell you, that's something pretty special.
Agreed. Probably one of the best values in video game history right there.
Yeah, if we could have had that with Nintendo, even now,
yeah,
and pay the same price for it, I'd probably go back to Nintendo like hardcore.
Yeah. Yeah. I think they probably might actually hurt Nintendo nowadays, though, because there's probably a lot of people would subscribe, play all the first party stuff, and then cancel once they burn through it. But
I don't know. I think they would keep it.
Yeah.
Because they'd at least be getting something. Now everybody, what do? They run emulators, download ROMs. That's how you play Nintendo now. Most people.
Yeah, fair enough.
So they're not getting crap off that.
Oh, so you're talking about going getting their backlog and put yeah.
Yeah, that's what Game Pass does. You can play original Xbox games on there, 360.
Okay, that would be special. That would be very, very special if they did that. I thought they were talking about like current gen only, but yes, if they wouldn't put their whole backlog on there, that would be the video game equivalent of Disney Plus.
Right.
As far as folks wanting to kind of live out some of their childhood and go play some of these games, like that'd be really special.
You get bits of it now, like they'll release like the Turtles collection or the Contra collection, something like that. But if they could start up something like Game Pass for all their old titles, I think all the gamers would probably go for that. They'd treat it like a Netflix subscription.
Agreed.
You have it. If you don't use it, it's still there just in case you're going to go back into it or something. That would be great.
That would be pretty great.
And I still do the arcade thing today. Arcades have gotten more advanced and they're always going to be fun.
Agreed. Well, I don't have anything else, Dave. Anything for you?
No, not really. I think retro consoles, they've come a long way. We grew up with some great advances in it. It was a good experience at the time.
Yeah.
And I think today we're just kind of, if it's not going to be virtual reality, I really don't know where it can go from here. I think we're just kind of at a standstill.
Maybe so.
But I will always be a gamer, and I find myself playing the older games a lot more now.
That makes two of us.
So, yeah, that's it.
Well, I mean, I want to end with this, and you're going to hear me reuse this statement over and over again in future episodes, but we come together to talk about stuff that we geeked out about, stuff that we love then, we love now, and I would say to the listeners out there, the things you love, don't let it go. Don't do it. Keep going back. Keep loving that stuff till the day you die because it's enriching. A lot of these games, they still stand up. They still bring back those same feelings, that same joy. Don't ever let that joy go. With that, signing out. I am your host, Gina Rona.
And I'm Dave, everybody, and keep on going.
Thank you.